Well, hi. It's weird. I'm like,
I know. I don't know how to... We're just going to look at ourselves.
that's fine. Well,
We're together.
welcome to A Word with the girls, right here.
What up?
How's it going?
Yum.
Now you all need to know what we are eating. We have some cookies made by Molly. What are these?
Brown butter chocolate chip cookies.
If you could smell these. And cheers to being together.
Cheers.
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 Yay. It's not that often that you get the podcast with the sisters all together. So, here we are. Now, tonight is a night of therapy, which includes
Wine.
Wine therapy.
In moderation, of course.
Of course.
We're being wise.
some delicious sweet treats, some reality TV, and
Some sister conversation.
Yeah, togetherness.
venting, reminiscing, celebrating, all the things. Yeah. But it's just been so fun. Like, we are spending almost like a week and a half together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like sweet. And we just came back from a weekend full of family and friends and food and people. And then,
It was awesome.
yeah. So that was really sweet. And then Kevin and I are staying a week extra because Molly is running in this race and we're excited to celebrate you. You want to give an update on like what's about to happen in 5 days or whatever?
Yeah. So yeah, the Imogene Run is this Saturday, September 7th. Yeah, and a lot of my therapy, and especially in the last like few weeks, has been about trying to get my head right about it. And it's been really, really hard because I have been training intentionally for 3 months, and I've run like over 300 miles in the last 3 months.
So cool.
Which my therapist was like, that's like to Denver.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Like, you've run to Denver, you know, which is just really funny.
Cool.
So anyways, I have been training, but like it's a mountain. And so it feels like this huge, you know, thing in front of me. And, so yeah, I've been trying to get my head right. Well, in a strange turn of events, it's been raining a lot, and the road down into Telluride, where the finish is, has been washed out, and they couldn't repair it in time, and so because of that, they're having to refigure the course. And so it's only 14.2 miles, and the elevation gain is only 3,000 as compared to like 6. And so yeah, so it'll be a different race and a different experience, but it really, I mean, from a really self-centered point of view, it feels like this kind of cool gift that that I get, that like, here's something that all your training is going to be able to like pay off, and
you know that you can
will
do it because
succeed.
you've already done it, because the time point that she was afraid of has now changed.
Well, and it's the turnaround point pretty much, which she's already run.
Twice.
Right.
And you need 2 hours to get to the top, and she's done it in 90 minutes. So, like, we already know.
Yeah.
Like,
because really that was like the main thing that was getting in my head, was I had to make it to 7.65 miles in 2.5 hours, and I hadn't done that yet. Like, I was too slow. And so I was, you know, trying to psych myself up of like, the adrenaline will help, the more people will help, like, I'm gonna have to dig deep, I can do it, you know. And now it's like I don't have to worry about it so much, because I've done that most of that course. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to run back down. Like, it's just gonna be really a successful day, I think. And so I'm just really grateful for that. And I already am planning to like sign up next year and do the real thing and like train more intentionally. So yeah, so it's wild, but fun.
Well, and if you don't believe that God gives good gifts, well, here you go. The Lord gives
Yeah.
good little nuggets of, see, thumbs up. No, I'm just super excited to get to be there and celebrate you, because I feel like I miss out on a lot of these like really exciting things that you guys get to do and whatnot, and so it's just like really special to get to be here and participate in that and celebrate in that, and like we got to celebrate Millie's birthday and your birthday. Like these are the things that we're looking forward to. So it's just really special that we get to be here for that, because I have a lot of FOMO.
I mean, we
too.
just, gosh, we need you to move here sooner.
I know. Well, and you know, this week has been really, even today. Okay, so you know, I have now been coined the cruise director in our family, which is totally fine, because like I'm always like, let's have a plan of doing whatever, and we're gonna accomplish a lot. And so today I was like, Kevin, let's go check out the school that you might go to, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk to somebody, like total cold call visit. And it was like the most encouraging conversation. We got to meet with the director of this aviation school and like really come up with a plan that just gives me such peace of mind, being like, this is it, like this is what's going to happen. But it probably won't be till August of 2026, which feels very far away, but it will be here sooner than we know it. So I don't know, I think it's exciting, but maybe a little bit delayed, but that's okay. Then we'll get to be a part of all the things all the time.
Yeah.
So
So that's our word for the evening, is therapy.
but therapy can look different depending on your, you know, like stage of life.
Yeah.
Like it's relative.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously all three of us are major advocates of going to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs a therapist. Which I think, I don't know if it's the same for y'all, but like growing up with a faith background, I always thought that going to therapy was weak, or it meant that like my faith wasn't strong enough, because at the end of the day, like Jesus can heal me or whatever, bring me comfort or wisdom. But then I think, Molly, you may have been the first one to kind of like encourage it.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first go to therapy?
When I lived in Thailand.
Oh.
Mhm.
Did someone recommend it, or were you like, I need to do this?
Yeah, I mean, the work over there was really challenging, and I think it was just like bringing some stuff up in me that I couldn't work through with my usual
Coping.
strategies.
Yeah.
And it was like getting in the way of relationships with people. It was getting in the way of me being able to do the work that I was doing. And like the missions community, the nonprofit community, like it's so insulated, like everybody knows everybody and everybody's, so then it also wasn't, you know, you don't want to like vent to people or talk about stuff like,
You don't want to be like gossipy, because sometimes
yeah, because
when
it's
you're-
just, then it's just
yeah.
gossip and it's not very like respectful. And
Mhm.
I think I needed just a neutral space to be able to really process through stuff. And yeah, so I found a gal who was like Canadian
in
and-
person or on video.
in person.
Cool.
Yeah. So I had a couple of different therapists over there. One of them was a gal who was American, who was like going, like she was in school to be a therapist, so she was like in training. She was not very helpful. Or it was like an interesting therapeutic relationship where like I would tell her stuff and then she would get really emotional and then I would talk her down and then like it was really not a good situation. But
That's funny.
but yeah. So I've been going relatively consistently probably since then.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, especially I know like with your transition from when you lived overseas to then like moving back to the States, like that required
Mm-hmm.
some major transition. So I think anytime there's like big transitions or a hard time shifting,
Mhm.
I think having that neutral person to like talk through, because sometimes I've seen this like cool picture of somebody with like this knot and then they bring it to a therapist and they like untangle it, and sometimes it just takes somebody like a third party to help you see clearly because you're just like so in it.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you?
Well, my first therapy situation was when I was a teenager.
Really?
Uh-huh. I've always been really hard on myself, and as an athlete, I was like so hard on myself that I would just become debilitated and just like frustrated and couldn't move past it. And so mom and dad wanted me to see one of their dear friends who's a wonderful man. And so I went and talked with him, but it was a little awkward. You know, I think I was maybe 16, 15 maybe. I can't really remember exactly, but I was a teenager, and it's not that he didn't make it feel like a safe place or anything. He was wonderful, good man. But it just felt awkward, like he was going to go back and tell my parents, even though he wouldn't. It just didn't really feel like a place where I could really open up.
Yeah.
So that was my first situation. And then I didn't go back to therapy until Alex and I had a hard season back in 2019, 2020. We both just had some hard stuff happen. And so we both ended up going to therapy, and it was the best thing for both of us. I think it helped us learn how to communicate better. For me to not take things personally and really work through my own issues and not make my husband's issues my issues and really disconnect those things. And yeah, I just think when you go to a place where you feel like you really dig deep into dark places, you feel safe to actually work on those things.
Yeah.
And that maybe you didn't even know were a thing until you're talking about it.
And you got to do the cool
EMDR. Yeah, because a lot of my stuff was pretty, I guess that means it's deep seated. I don't really know. But it was like I had to really change the pathways in my head about things that I thought about, whether it was myself or a situation in high school or just traumatic things that needed to be redirected.
Yeah.
So yeah, my therapist here had me do the EMDR, and it was very interesting and felt very just like voodoo stuff. And I was like, what is going on? And I told her, I was like, I need you to bring Jesus into this, so I know that there's like God is healing this, and it's not just like this buzzing in my hand. Like I need God to be a part of this too.
Cool.
And she was super open to that. And then I saw her for a couple months, and then she and I both felt like I was at a good place, and that was true. And so I didn't go back to her. And then after I had Annie, it was just, life is hard, and motherhood's hard, relationships are hard. And every time you kind of get into a new phase of life, things change, friendships change, you change, and I just needed a new perspective. And so I went to another therapist, and she was wonderful. I only went to her maybe half a dozen times, and then we both felt like, okay, I have some tools. I've worked through some lies that are creeping back up, and she was a believer, and so she brought Jesus into it, and yeah. So it's just the best. And I think my husband is always going to be my teammate and my cheerleader and wants to know what's going on in my heart and stuff. But I also think, and he thinks, like sometimes there's just things that he can't help with, and maybe it would just be better if I just talk to a third party and then come back to him and process it after the fact with him.
Yeah.
And so that's been helpful too, to know that he's got my back and wants what's best for me, and has been there too. So he knows how helpful therapy is. And yeah, it's a humbling thing, but it's important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I feel like I did see a sports psychologist in college because I was like in a really bad place because a new coach had come and I was sitting on the bench, and my identity was so wrapped up in soccer that when it was kind of taken away, it was kind of crippling. And so I did that for like a little bit. And then it wasn't until like 2020-ish when I was like in an infusion, and a social worker came to talk to me for the first time. And she was just asking me like how I was doing, and I don't think Kevin was there. And I like burst into tears, and she was like, I think you might be like depressed. And I was like, what? No. But then after talking with her and realizing like I was in this huge city, I didn't have community, I was struggling with like my purpose, and like I wasn't content with like what I was doing with work, and like marriage is hard, and being in the military and all the things is just like really hard. And so she encouraged me to go see somebody. And so then I started seeing a clinical psychologist. we also saw a marriage counselor, just kind of help work through some things. And then Molly, your friend, was kind of going through training to be a spiritual director, which is kind of like a really cool way that they just like bring God into like the conversation. So at one point I had 3 therapists at the same time. It was great. And so I've been seeing the spiritual director for like, I don't know, 4 years now. And yeah, and it's cool because even Kevin has the same kind of opinion as Alex. Like, he now tells other guys, like, you really should go to marriage counseling. Like, it's so helpful. Like, I think you just realize, wow, it's like 2 sinful, broken people trying to make a relationship work. And if you learn tools on, like, management expectation was, like, our biggest thing of being, like, because it's hard as a military spouse, like, you're not always number one. And that's really hard for me, you know? And so then you're like, okay, well, here's what we need to get done, or here's what I'm wanting this weekend, or whatever. And when you're able to communicate that,
Yes.
it like makes a relationship. Then I'm not feeling hurt, you know, when you're
Yep.
busy working, because I'm like, I know that's important to you. And once you get that done, then I get time with you, or whatever. So, anyways, it's just been huge. And so I was trying to encourage people, like, yeah, go talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I also think, like, outside of like therapy, like for me, exercise is a form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am super competitive in the things that I do, or I have strong emotions, and so if I can like channel it in a healthy way and like have a good workout or go crush a volleyball or whatever, like that's where I channel it in a healthy way, so it doesn't like seep
Yeah.
into my relationships.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is baking therapy for you?
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, you know, when I'm in charge of making someone's dream birthday cake,
It's a little
That's
stressful.
stressful, but no, I like baking, I like running,
Painting.
I like paint by numbers, and time by myself. That's really what helps me too.
Which is so interesting because isolation is the worst. That's when I like go in a dark hole. Like, I need to be
You like verbally
around people.
process.
I need people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just gonna go serve somewhere or get out of the house. Yeah, because
And I think I'm like a perfect combination of both. Like, if I'm going to be surrounded by people, they need to be like the right people. Otherwise, I want to be alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Because, yeah, people exhaust me. But if they're the right ones who, like, will let me verbally process
Mm-hmm.
and will do the same, then I'm like, okay, we're good. But if it's exhausting people who just, like, then no, I'd rather be alone.
Yeah.
but I think like I'm super thankful for you, Molly, because I feel like you've really been this advocate for at least 3 of us.
Uh-huh.
And then
Definitely.
it also makes for space to be able to be open with each other much more than I think we ever have been.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
like to be able to talk about like this is what's hard, or because at the end of the day, like we should carry each other's burdens. I mean, that's kind of what the Bible talks about in a way of like let people in and let people know so we can like come alongside you so you're not struggling by yourself.
Well, and
or-
I think that's why some friendships, relationships work and some don't. Like, we all can go deep and be there and let each other be deep together.
Mhm.
But then when you try and get there with other people who don't meet you in the vulnerable stuff, then it gets hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, we all have done the hard work and like can understand what we all have been through.
Mhm.
And we work hard on a relationship too, you know.
Yeah.
Like being really intentional when tough stuff does come up, or when there's a glitch in the communication, or, you know, I
Mhm.
think especially in our family, things tend to get a little tense when we're like trying to make a plan or trying to collectively do something together. And so, yeah, because we have the tools to like take a step back or like really articulate what we need or do the pre-planning that's necessary to like
Mm-hmm.
diffuse any tension or whatever that could come up, like,
Or really say what we need and be like,
right.
I can't, like, I
Mhm.
can't, or like, let me do this for you, or
Mhm.
either step in or be brave enough to be like, no, this is a boundary and I'm not gonna, you know. And I think we have done the work to let those things not be a personal attack. You know,
Right.
it's just like,
For
okay,
sure.
no, that's right. That is what she needs. Okay, it's fine.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still always working on like accepting criticism and like not being angry or defensive, you know? Like,
Well,
like,
yeah.
I think it's things we like always
Same.
work on, but
something that I've been learning, especially with my most recent therapist, because I've also been doing EMDR, which is like, I can't ever remember what it stands for, but you're basically like using both sides of your brain, and when you engage both sides, then it helps kind of create those new neural pathways. And it's been really interesting to incorporate God into that. My therapist has a faith background, but isn't necessarily Christian, but she like knows how to incorporate it in. So I will say that you don't have to go to a Christian therapist. If your therapist is good, they will incorporate your spirituality into your therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So, PSA. In fact, I would argue that non-Christian therapists are sometimes better because it doesn't bring that like pressure in of like, well, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, am I doing this right? Like, it brings it in to the situation where it's like your spirituality and your relationship with God. But as we've been doing that EMDR and trying to like create those new thought patterns, it just makes me think of like the verses in the Bible that talk about the renewal of your mind
Mm-hmm.
and setting your mind on things above. And I think God is in that business. Like, he's in the business of doing that. And he created our brains and he created mental health. And so it just feels like it was like a aha and also a duh moment of like, oh, well, it would make sense to incorporate him into this practice of creating healthy patterns of thinking, because that's what he wants for us. Like, he wants us to live in freedom, and he wants us to live in joy and free from the things that burden us, because regardless of what kind of trauma you've experienced, we've all experienced trauma of some sort. And so that is really heavy and can burden us unless we figure out how to let it go or deal with it or manage it. And I think that therapy is a really excellent way to do that, especially in partnership with God and the work that he's already doing. So
I would also say that like no one is too far gone. Like you're never too old or too young, or like I think God is the giver of newness, and I just think if you're in a rut or don't know how to change something, like that's why therapy is there. Yeah, just like people in their old age, it's not like you have to be stuck in a certain way. Like, no, you actually can change that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think like maybe generationally, like we're more open to it than maybe generations past. You know, where you just kind of suck it up, and I don't know. I think that can be unhealthy. But I think also therapy is hard. It's hard. It's never fun. It's hard.
It's horrible.
Yeah, because you're literally having to like relive things that you might be ashamed of, or things that you are insecure about. But it's so helpful. But it's also like dating. Sometimes you got to find the right therapist who you feel like listens to you and helps whatever.
Right.
And so sometimes that can feel daunting too, to be like, well, I'm not gonna be able to find this or whatever.
Or like going and you're like, why does this person actually want to hear all my problems? Seriously? And that's how I felt initially. And I just kept apologizing in therapy. I was like, I'm so sorry. I know you don't want to hear all this stuff. This is so stupid. And they're like, no,
You're
it's
paying me.
yes, that's what she would say. But I remember I just kept apologizing. And then I realized like, no, this is okay. Like, I just felt like I was burdening people.
See, I just had so much pride thinking like, there's nothing we're gonna talk about, and they'd ask one word, and all of a sudden it's like word vomit. Like,
Well, it's so
where's this coming from?
it's crazy when someone asks you, all right, how are you? And you just start crying.
Right,
And
like
you're like
literally
how you
something's wrong
said,
with me.
yeah. But I feel like every therapy session when they're like, okay, and you're like, blah.
Yeah.
That's funny. I definitely get stuck in my head of like I'm already planning, what are we going to talk about? We got to make sure that what are we going to work on today? Like, I come in with like a plan.
Wow. No, I'm like, oh no.
Which is not great, you know, like, because then I'm trying to control the situation. So,
shoot.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's kind of interesting because, like, there is this, like, weight that is lifted every time I would go to therapy or whatever. And I think about the verse of, like, cast your burdens at his feet, you know, because he cares for you. And, like, it is literally, like, this, like, physical letting go of things. And it is amazing, the burden that is lifted and the weight that's off your shoulders when you share. And sometimes you even say it, like, it lessens its power over you.
Totally. I mean, it's like exercise, you know, like you don't want to, and it hurts, and, you know, it's annoying, but I've rarely exercised and not felt better on the other end.
Yes.
And I think the same thing can be said for therapy. It's terrible. I mean, I hate it. Like, I have to, like, psych myself up to talk, but, you know, talk about myself for a whole hour without the reciprocal conversation, you know? So that part is always, like, so daunting for me, but it's always worth it.
It's always so helpful.
Also, as far as, like, finding a therapist, I feel like, you know, I talk about how I go to therapy all the time, and so people are like, oh my gosh, how do you find a therapist? I don't even know. How do you... And honestly, I just tell people every single time. Every time I've found a therapist, it's been by going on psychologytoday.com, plugging in my zip code and my insurance, and maybe a couple of preferences. They have, like, all kinds of filters or whatever, like, based on, you know, if you're looking for a Christian therapist or the issues that you're trying to work on or whatever. So I plug all that in, I scroll through all the choices, and I create, like, a little email template that's basically like, here's my name, here's why I'm looking for therapy, I'm wondering if you have any
Availability.
availability. And I just copy and paste it, and I email, like, 3 or 4 or 5 of the therapists that stick out to me, and then I just wait for a response, and then you go to the intake and you feel it out, and if it doesn't feel right, then you move on to the next person. Like, they're not offended if you say, I think I'm going to keep looking, because they want you to find someone that you have good chemistry with. But anyways, so that's also just a PSA.
No, that's really helpful. I think the practical tip is really important.
Yeah, because it can feel daunting, and it can feel like, where do I even start? And I don't know anybody and whatever. But honestly, literally every time I've found a therapist, it's been on Psychology Today. And that's been in Bangkok and Washington and here. And yeah. And then the other thing you can do is, if they write back and say, I don't have availability, you can ask them, like, do you have anyone that you might recommend? And then they can maybe tell you, like, oh, my colleague over here, I know they do have availability, and they'll, like, connect you or hook you up. So, anyways.
Super helpful. Or
Yeah.
if you are related or affiliated with the military, Military One Source provides free therapy, 12 sessions
Wow.
for couples, because TRICARE doesn't cover marriage counseling, but, like, individual counseling TRICARE does. But Military One Source was great too. So there are
That's
really great
nice.
resources out there. I think sometimes you just gotta do the hard work and take that first step.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, like, spiritual direction is a great option as well. That can be sometimes a little bit cheaper. I'm sure there's some directories out there for people who are spiritual directors looking for more clients. There's also, like, if you work for schools or school districts, there's usually, like, employee
Assistance
sessions that that you have access to, like 6 free sessions or something. So that's something to look into as well. So it's out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Yep. Well, especially in, like, grief counseling, like, Kevin didn't really do it, but, like, I did that after we lost a friend, to be like, this is new, I have no idea how to navigate this. And it was only for a short period of time, but yeah, it was just, like, so helpful to be able to talk through, how do I navigate this now that my life has changed forever, this time point moving forward.
Totally.
So
Dang.
yeah.
So yeah, here's to therapy and togetherness.
Amen.
And
And
The Bachelorette.
Jesus.
That was so much fun.
Thanks for everyone who listened to our podcast. I know this summer has kind of been a little wonky. We'll get back on track eventually, but, you know, this is life, and we're authentic.
Yeah.
Well, cheers, friends. Thank you so much for joining us for another
Yes.
Word with the Girls podcast where one word sparks conversation. So take the word therapy to your people. See how many people, if it's something you're looking into, please check it out, or feel free to reach out and ask us about our experiences, because we highly, highly recommend. But,
Open book.
yeah. Anyways, but until next time, we'll give you an update on how Molly does on the race.
Yeah.
And yeah, make sure to like, follow, and share on Instagram and YouTube. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Love ya.
Love you more.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us for A Word with the Girls. New episodes drop every week.